Welcome to another English Solutions for Business and Life video. Today we will be looking at Unit 1, Global Intermediate Book, and we will be focusing on the grammar section. In this grammar section, we will look at state and action verbs, present simple, how to conjugate it, present continuous, how to conjugate it. These two we will look at when we use each of these. We will also look at questions and subject or object questions. So let's begin. First, let's look at state and action verbs. Action verbs are verbs that talk about or describe things that happen. Action verbs can be used or are used in the present simple or the present continuous. For example, the sun shines here or there every day, or the sun is shining today. There are things that are happening. Now we use state verbs for states or to describe states like being, possessing, feeling, or thinking. And we normally use the present simple for these kind of verbs. For example, what are you meaning is talking about thinking verb. So this one would be wrong. It does not sound right. We would rather use what do you mean in present simple, not in present continuous. Some common state verbs are agree, appear, be, believe, belong, contain, feel, fit, forget, hate, have, last, like, love, matter, mean, need, own, prefer, realize, remember, seem, understand, and want. There are obviously more, but these are verbs that are used often as state verbs. Some of these verbs can be state or action verbs. For example, feel could be a state or action verb, but the meaning would change. It's not the same, these clothes feel lovely and soft, in which we're talking about the state of the clothes, or she's feeling the clothes to see if she likes them, which is talking about the action of touching and feeling. Some state verbs are used as action verbs in informal context. For example, like and love. You could say, I'm loving it, I'm liking it, but those would be informal contexts. You would not use that in a formal context. So that's it for the action and state verbs. Now let's look at the next part, present simple and present continuous. Present simple and present continuous. Now we use the present simple to talk about habits or routines and things that are always true. For example, I wake up at 7 a.m. I brush my teeth after eating, or the earth goes around the sun. Those are present simple verbs. Now, present continuous, we use present continuous to talk about things that are happening now or about temporary and changing situations. For example, I am speaking English, or I am living with my parents. You could say that I am speaking English is an action that is happening now, and living with my parents, it could be a temporary thing. Now you probably know how to conjugate these verbs. I'm not going to explain it in detail in this video, but I'm just going to remind you that most of the time the conjugation for I, you, we, and they in present simple is different to he, she, and it. In most cases, you would add an S after the verb when you're conjugating it with he, she, or it. For example, I speak. In this case, I speak. He speaks. It would change like that. Most of the present continuous verbs wouldn't change, but you would add an ing after the verb, such as in this example, speaking. We don't usually use the present continuous with state verbs, which we already saw in the last part, in the last section of this video. Now let's look at the questions. These are just some general rules for questions. For example, when we are saying a question with be, this verb would go before the subject. So it will be and then the subject and then the rest of the question. For example, is she a famous composer? Now, in the case of modals, when we use modals, questions in present or past continuous, and questions in present or past perfect, the rule is that the subject would go between the auxiliary verb and the main verb. For example, have you been to China? And lastly, for present or past simple questions, the auxiliary verb do or did would go before the subject. For example, when does the country have elections? Now, these are the general rules of the structure of questions in different tenses. Now, there is another rule for subject or object questions, which is that when a question word is the object of a present simple or past simple question, we use do, does, or did. For example, which authors do you like best? Which is the subject because the object because the subject is you. So we would use do, as you can see here. Now, when a question word is the subject of a present simple or past simple question, we don't use do, does, or did. For example, who painted the Mona Lisa? As you can see, we do not use do, does, or did, because the subject is the question word. So that's pretty much it for this grammar section of this video or this unit. We hope you enjoyed this video and that it has helped you to understand the grammar of this unit better. Thank you for watching and see you on next video.